Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 610 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our sixth book just came out. It's called I'm So Beautiful, It's Ridiculous: Unleashing and Promoting Strength, Self-Worth, and Real Sisterhood. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, there is so much noise out there currently for college students in the form of social media and distractions like our smartphones. I would highly encourage everyone to have some silence, some meditation, some mindfulness in your lives, at least in the morning before you start your day. I mean, we're talking about maybe 5 minutes max. It will help you to focus on what's important, and it will help to reduce your anxiety that you're feeling right now. So let's talk a little bit more about that with our next guest. Dr. Dean Rudoy is a graduate of the Johns Hopkins University, trained at the New York University-Bellevue Medical Center, and received his doctorate in clinical psychology from Fordham University. He is the author of 3 books, including his latest, Emissaries, Stories and Reflections, which is a collection of 60 stories lived and lessons learned over the past 3/4 of a century, which has been described as a quiet book for chaotic times. In addition to practicing teaching and writing about psychology, he has been devoted to causes, children, peace, social justice, and human rights, serving as a consultant to national and international organizations and on various boards, including that of the Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights, on whose Board of Trustees he currently serves. Welcome to the show, Dean.
Good to see you, Dr. Mike.
Hey, it is wonderful to have you on the show. You don't have to be so formal, I promise. You can just call me Mike. It's totally fine. But I will say this, I am so impressed with your career. We really have to start there because it began with activism in Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
working to stop the Vietnam War. And later it evolved into psychology and teaching. I'm wondering what inspired your shift from political to psychological healing.
You know, I've always had lifelong commitments, those that you mentioned, to children, peace, social justice, human rights. And everyone thought I was going to run for office, including me. And then I spent 5 years on Capitol Hill and became somewhat disenchanted with the theater and pretensions of politics. And one afternoon, I sat under a tree in Washington, D.C., and had these graduate school catalogs all around me, and I was thumbing through them and kept returning to psychology. I've always been interested in what motivates us to behave the way we do. And I thought, well, this seems like a good fit, and eventually enrolled and became a clinical psychologist. My commitments, however, have remained the same. All I did was adjust from floodlight to spotlight.
Fascinating, really interesting stuff. And if you're interested in what motivates people, I start out with Abraham Maslow. I mean, let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy. And that's where I start a lot of the conversations when I'm talking to fraternities and sororities, because really
Wow.
what we're talking about is the love and belonging that these college students need
Yeah.
when they get to a college campus. And that's typically why they join these fraternities and sororities. And if we have all of those things, including safety, then we can get all kinds of wonderful results out of them. So I'm fascinated by the same stuff you're fascinated by. And I've also noticed that you've written extensively on peace, on violence, the human condition. I'm wondering how all of your early experiences in social justice, whether it be the Vietnam War, stopping the war, or what have you, how did all of that stuff shape the way that you approach healing and empathy today?
You know, I've always experienced the boundary that separates me from other people as actually joining me to them. And since I was a child, I've had experiences of empathic resonance with people, particularly people in pain. A quotation from the film The Legend of Bagger Vance comes to mind, and it goes like this: There's not a person alive who isn't carrying a secret burden. And I believe not only is that a true statement, but also that it reflects sort of the underlying motivation of all of my work, whether that was in social activism or teaching or writing or practicing psychology.
Mm. That's really powerful, and it's something that I think we should all consider, right? Everybody is carrying some burden, and many times we don't even know what burden they're carrying. We have no way of knowing if we just meet them, let's say in college. We really don't know what they've experienced up until that point, and I think that's really important when we're talking about, things like hazing as an example, and what that could potentially turn into when we don't really know what this person's traumas might have been.
Yeah.
So I think that's really fascinating as well. And you often describe your life as a journey from acquisition to letting go. And that also resonates with me. Can you tell us what that transition has looked like for you personally and what
I,
that has taught you about fulfillment in life?
yeah. There's a Zen expression that one's mind should be like a mirror that accepts everything, rejects nothing, receives, but does not keep. There's also a Yiddish expression: a shroud has no pockets. At the age of 76, let me give you the perspective from over the hill. It's been an interesting climb. On the first side of the hill, I guided my life by a certain A list: achieve, accomplish, acquire, accumulate, things I could get. On the second side of the hill, I'm trying to guide my life by a different A list: attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance, things I can give. And coincidentally, these are the very things I need. And what I've discovered is that when I give these things, I receive them. Much like when you light one candle from another, the first candle becomes illuminated in giving its gift and is in no way diminished. I think I'm slowly coming upon a key to ancient wisdom: give what you need. Yoda told us, train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. And Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home. So I figure it is best for me to loosen my grip on things so that I am available to hold another's hand.
That's absolutely brilliant. Wow. That's profound and certainly something that I've experienced too. I think when I first graduated from college, it was all about acquiring things. I think about that brand new shiny white Mustang that I needed to drive when I graduated from college because in my brain I felt like I had earned it. I got my college degree and now this is what I have earned in life. And so I needed to collect things, a nice house, a beautiful car, a hot spouse, all of the things, right? And and then later on in life, I'm saying to myself, nobody really cares what kind of car I drive. Really, nobody genuinely cares. It's all about giving back, at this phase of life. And I've noticed that that's what motivates me now is just giving back to others and seeing what they can do with what I've given them. And it's so, but you said it much more eloquently than I ever could.
Um, I think sometimes when we worry too much about what people think of us, we should remember what Eleanor Roosevelt once said: don't give too much thought to what people think of you. You'd be surprised you'd be surprised at how infrequently they do. Because, we're all caught up in our own stuff and
Yeah,
thinking about ourselves most of the time.
yeah,
But, what you describe is entirely normative. That's the first side of the hill that we climb,
right.
where we're gathering things and establishing an identity based on our possessions. And then, if we're lucky, we reach the apex of the hill, as I did, and I found a mirror up there. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to acquire a mirror. And I looked in the mirror and I saw an old man. And then I began my descent on the hill and am learning, other lessons.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think you're right. Our priorities absolutely do
Yeah.
shift over time. And I think it's important for us to constantly ask ourselves, what are our priorities at this juncture? And you will notice that they will absolutely change over time.
Yeah.
So that is very, very interesting. Now, your book, it's called Emissaries, Stories and Reflections. That has been called a quiet book for chaotic times. I'm wondering, what does that phrase actually mean to you, especially considering all of the digital noise, all of the social media stuff that's out there, and the anxiety that young people today are experiencing?
Um, we're all in the same boat,
Hmm.
and the seas are stormy.
Hmm.
And as I think I just mentioned, my hope is that these stories will provide a safe harbor for people. They are tangible and palpable, um, an antidote to the virtual and artificial shiny objects that occupy our attention. They're quiet stories that invite the reader into a safe space of reflection with their own thoughts and feelings and memories.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly something that we need right now. As somebody, as you described, sitting under a tree in Washington, D.C., boy, oh boy, are we living in chaotic times right now. I mean, just read a newspaper or turn on the television and it's chaos. I mean, it's
Yeah,
utter chaos.
yeah.
And so I think your book is really timely, and I do think that we're kind of seeking refuge right now for just a little bit of quiet, and I think your book absolutely provides that. I think you mentioned before one of your core ideas, which is I am what I give what I need. And so college students right now, right, they're climbing the hill as you described it. They're acquiring things. They're very into what other people think of them. They're posting on social media, advertising, that they're on vacation now, or they're driving a nice car now, or they're out to a fancy meal now.
Right.
So I'm wondering how, in that environment, how can college students translate this philosophy of I give what I need into daily acts of service, leadership,
Yeah.
and kindness on
Yeah.
campus?
First of all, let me say that for a long time, I thought that what I'd gotten in life, either through accomplishment or acquisition, pretty much was a reflection of who and what I am.
Mhm.
And to a certain extent, it's true. But all of my stuff, as you and I've talked about, is going to be forgotten when I disappear around the corner. What will remain is what I've placed in people's minds and in people's hearts. And the same with young people. Um, these are things only I can give, by the way. Only I can give deans attention, affection, appreciation, admiration, acceptance. I've read a lot over the years in religious and spiritual and philosophical texts in search of guidance and meaning. And I recently came across three sentences that reach the heart of them all. And these were written by a Swiss philosopher, 19th century, named Henri Frédéric Amiel. And this is what he wrote. Life is short. We don't have much time to gladden the hearts of those who walk this way with us. So be swift to love and make haste to be kind. I would invite young people to experiment with these ideas. Next time they feel in need of support or encouragement, consolation, to give these things to another person, to listen carefully, to abide with another person. Um, in Star Wars, Qui-Gon Jinn, you may remember, is a Jedi master, and he instructs his student, Anakin Skywalker, your focus determines your reality. Now, when I was watching that movie, I had to put it on pause because it is such a profound statement. Your focus determines your reality. So what I would advise young people and old people to, as well, likewise, shift the focus from I to thou. The miracle of the human spirit is that we can give what we never received,
Yeah.
even what was taken from us.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like even with this podcast, right? The whole idea behind the podcast is to give what I never really had as a college student and give it away freely. I don't charge anybody for this. It's just to give it away freely and give access to people that ordinarily college students would never receive. And even with my research, writing a dissertation on the early warning signs of hazing in college fraternities and sororities. I
Yeah.
mean, that is really about giving back to the undergraduate who myself was hazed as a college student,
Ah,
right? It's
yeah.
all about helping that kid who was experiencing that back in the day and explaining why this is happening and what can we do in order to solve this problem. And that is going to be the lasting legacy. That's what people are going to remember
Yeah.
me by.
Yeah.
It's by that research,
Yeah.
and that he cared. He cared about us, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting the way that you think. I like it. I think it's really good. The other thing that I've noticed about college students is that they don't ever really want to be wrong about anything. Perfection is something that
Mhm.
they expect. And I'm wondering, they have all of this pressure to have everything all together in life. How can they begin to accept, as you write, that we are whole as we are?
We can never have it all together. Just as you could never compose a symphony suddenly all at once, and there it is. A life symphony takes a lifetime to compose. When I say we are whole as we are, what I'm referring to is that within ourselves are all of the facets of humanity, including the opposites, masculine and feminine, inside each of us. But sometimes we end up feeling divided against ourselves, either in regard to those opposites that reside inside, or, well, things we don't like about ourselves that we tend to push into the shadow, which, by the way, takes a lot of energy to push away those things and to hold them secretly in a dark place. The challenge is to first acknowledge that all of these facets are within us and then to begin to bring them together into a sense of wholeness. Think for a moment about fairy tales. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, they're always told from the girl's point of view. The young girl awaiting the arrival of the prince to maybe give her a kiss and wake her up. Another way of looking at fairy tales is that they are stories of the heroic journey of the prince in search of the feminine aspect of his soul. These stories are also autobiographical. Both the secular stories, fairy tales, folk tales, but also sacred stories from Torah, from the Christian Testament, from the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching. All these stories contain a multitude of characters, all of which reside within ourselves, or we wouldn't recognize them. Think, for example, of a child looking at a rainbow. Children know that rainbows are beautiful. Did somebody teach them? They know it because the counterpart of the rainbow is within themselves. And the same with all the stories that we read. All of these stories are autobiographical. Children, by the way, know that they are a part of everything and that everything is a part of them. Then they learn language. And every word we use, children and we adults, every word we use fractures the wholeness. Now, language comes in handy. I'm using it right now, right? but of course, every front has a back. Adam and Eve were living in Eden, a place of indescribable oneness. And then they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And suddenly, everything split in two. And that's where we live today, in a world of opposites. Every front has a back. Every top has a bottom. Every peak of a mountain has a valley below. Every crest of a wave has a trough. And though we may prefer fronts and tops and peaks and crests, the challenge is to acknowledge first the inseparable coincidence of these opposites. And the next step then is to bring them together, both out there and in here, into a sense of oneness.
Wow, that's beautiful. You know, as you're talking, I really think about myself as a college student, as a freshman coming in. And I tell you what, I really suffered from loneliness. I called my dad and told him that I was ready to quit school without a college degree
Yeah,
after my first semester because I was lonely. Going back to Abraham Maslow, I didn't feel belongingness. And for me, that was critical. That was really critical if I was
yeah,
going to be successful. I needed to feel belongingness. Imposter syndrome was certainly there. Self-doubt, am I really cut out for this?
right.
Right. So how do you suggest that college students begin to develop that inner confidence and the compassion for themselves?
My brief advice would be don't believe every thought you have, right? These problems that you just mentioned with loneliness and imposter syndrome and self-doubt arise out of two things. First, we each live in an inescapable subjective bubble. Now, it's inescapable, but it's not impermeable. The boundary blurs when we experience empathy, compassion, love. The second thing is that we lose touch with our instructions. We're not any different than every other living thing on this planet. Everything is born with a set of instructions of how to grow and how to unfold to its fullest promise. But we also have the capacity of self-reflection, and there's the rub. We get lost in the mansion of our minds, in all of the dark rooms and the dark corners. In 1969, the rock group The Who wrote an opera called Tommy. And during the opera, Tommy cries out several times, "See me, feel me, touch me, heal me." There's not a person alive that doesn't have these four yearnings. Loneliness. Um, when we're hungry, we eat. When we're thirsty, we drink. And when we're lonely, we befriend. Um, it's not much more complicated than that. We reach out to other people. This is the solution to loneliness. And I'm not talking about Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or any of the other iterations of the anti-social media. I'm talking about being actually present to another person, where you can look into their eyes, where you can reach across a table and touch them on the arm, where you are palpably present to another person. And as I mentioned before, when you give the gift of your companionship, you receive it immediately. Francis of Assisi said it best in probably the most radical religious statement ever. It is in giving that we receive. Now, how can that be? It's not some kind of fancy Western notion of karma. Well, what goes around comes around. No. He's saying, in giving, we receive. In that moment. The only way that can be true is if you and I are part of the same thing. In giving, we receive. So that's a way out of loneliness. Imposter syndrome is a little bit more complex. Um, we all play act often. Dr. Mike is play acting as host of a podcast. I'm play acting as guest on a podcast. And this is fine and it's fun. The problem occurs when there is a significant discrepancy between who we really are and who we present ourselves to be. And we present ourselves to be a certain way because we have internalized the expectations of parents and family and society and all of that. The bigger the gap between the actual self and the presented self, the bigger the problem, and it gets filled with a sense of being an imposter. Every child that's born brings into this life a unique gift. Regrettably, that gift gets buried oftentimes beneath templates of expectation from parents, from family, from society. And those templates leave deep impressions on the warm wax of childhood that last a lifetime. And then we feel we don't measure up to various standards, standards that, by the way, we have adopted, even though they're not our standards. We've never investigated them. We simply internalize them from outside in. The good news is that when we feel this discrepancy, it's a good thing because it's a signal that the true self, the authentic self that resides within us, is waking up and is beginning to move forward to offer itself, the authentic, true self that each of us have, and the gift that we came into this life with, coming forth to the world. Viktor Frankl, a brilliant psychologist, once wrote, "That which gives light must endure burning." Now, when I read that, that has so many levels, but one of them is that in this hard, sweet life, there will be sorrow and there will be suffering. But I have an abiding hope in this life. Yes, wherever there is sunlight, there will be shadows. But it is equally true that wherever there are shadows, there is bound to be light.
Hmm, well said. Really good stuff. In the book Emissaries, you wrote about coincidences and helpful emissaries that appear just at the right time. And that also has been my experience in
Right.
life. Exactly when I needed that person to be there, somehow they showed up at exactly the right time. How can college students recognize that and trust those moments in their own lives?
You know, beneath the surface of all that we know, I believe there is a pattern unfolding that makes itself known in the appearance of indelible coincidences, the approach of helpful emissaries, and the arrival of healing epiphanies. Imagine that we're all sitting together in a room in the dark. There's light out in the hallway. Someone gets up and opens the door, just a crack. What happens? A shaft of light comes from the hallway into the room and illuminates everything,
Mhm.
including the person who opened the door. Does an equal shaft of darkness leave the room and enter the hallway? No.
No.
Why? Because light is more powerful than darkness. All we need is for someone to open the door. Now, my advice to young people is don't wait for the arrival of an emissary. Be an emissary. Be an emissary of light, of kindness, of compassion, of understanding, of encouragement to other people. There's an opportunity just around the corner, and the smallest act can change a life.
Well, I'm going to be that emissary of light. I promise you that for as long as I am on this side of the ground, I promise you I will do that. I'm wondering because I mean, you've really said some profound things here today, and I'm going to go back and rewind and listen to it again because I just think it's really beautiful. If you could go back and speak to your 21-year-old self, you're fresh out of college, you're full of energy, you have all these questions about life. What advice would you give him about how to live a meaningful life?
The first thing I would tell him to do, and I would remind him of, is what his mother often said: go outside and play. Now, in kind of grown-up language, to me, what that means is to occasionally step off the world and onto the earth. I would also counsel him to remember everything he loved as a boy. And I would advise him to spend most of his time in the present, here and now. As seductive as are past memories, there and then, or future anticipations, if and when, everything emanates from and returns to the present moment. And finally, I would urge him to make haste to be kind.
That's wonderful advice and a really nice way to leave our interview. And I know the two of us we share this love of good food, and I do get occasionally to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and so I'm wondering the next time I end up in your neck of the woods, where should I go for a wonderful bite to eat?
There is a restaurant that is kind of my go-to with friends. It's called Seasons 52, which I believe is a chain, so you
Uh-huh.
might have one near you.
Hmm.
And they serve a particular dish called cedar plank salmon. And actually, next week I'm going to have it. And it's well worth getting into the car and getting over there.
I love it.
So
Cedar plank salmon. You have to go out there and try it. I will be the first person in line to give that a shot. And I'm going to let you know. I'm going to report back to you so that way you know what I think of the cedar plank salmon. All right. So if you, our listeners, if they want to connect with you for speaking opportunities, which by the way, I mean, the way that you speak and the amount of knowledge that you've accumulated and are now giving back is just incredible to me. Where should our college students go in order to connect with you?
well, I have a website, deanrudoy.com, and there's a contact page, and they could fill that out, and I would receive it, and I would respond.
Fantastic. It's deanrudoy.com, DeanRudoy,
Thank you.
and .com. Go to the website and connect with Dean. I tell you what, Dean, I'm just honored to be your friend. I'm honored to have you on the show. You've really just enlightened my day, and it was kind of really fortunate that we scheduled this on a Friday afternoon because now I can think about it all weekend and dissect it and try to figure out how I can apply all of these things to my life. So I just want to say thank you for sharing your bright light. You are an emissary of light. And so thank you for being that to me.
Thank you so much, Mike. Be
All
well.
right. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Dean Rudoy, I want you to like it and I want you to share it with other college students because they also need to see this light. We appreciate you being here and we'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.